17th, and you guys are probably familiar. Basically, the stock market crashed again for the third time, I think, in like 10 days, which is a record, I believe, since the Great Depression. The years 1929 through 1931, something like that. So it's in unprecedented times we're living right now. And this video is really not necessarily about the stock market in particular, but about Tesla and what's been happening with Tesla, the company, being an essential business, as you see in the title of this video, and also what's going on with their stock price. Because if you look at Tesla stock price, and if you followed me, you know, I'm open. I tell you, I bought Tesla stock at around, it was like around $200 or so a share, depending upon when I bought it. I bought it a few times. And of course, it went up to almost $1,000 a share recently, which was amazing, but it didn't last. And I predicted like $2,000 a share by the end of this year. I don't know if that's going to happen now. Things have changed so rapidly. And so what happened yesterday, Tesla stock closed, I think, in the 440s, and it had been in the 960s at the high point. So basically, it's lost about half of its value. And that's kind of crazy when you think about it. It hasn't even been that long. It dropped in half. And the stock market in general, I think, has dropped now about 30% from the highs, which is also pretty amazing. It's happened in such a short period of time. These are all records. None of this stuff has ever happened so fast before. And because of that, I guess there's a lot of people that are wondering what's going on. Well, let's get to the other part of this video title, being that Tesla has been named an essential business. And what exactly does that mean? Well, there's a lot of areas around the United States and around the world. We're specifically talking right now about the United States, where there's like a quarantine and there's a lockdown. People aren't allowed to go out and do things unless it's considered absolutely essential. And apparently Tesla has been considered essential because Tesla is in the San Francisco Bay Area, Silicon Valley area, and most of the counties around there. It was announced yesterday on Monday that they've gone into like a lockdown state, a curfew. Like you can't really go anywhere unless you're considered an essential business. You can't do anything. And there's all kinds of regulations on that. But apparently, this is all new. It's all groundbreaking. We're all just kind of figuring this out as we go along. But Tesla is now considered an essential business. And when I say Tesla, I mean the manufacturing plant, the Fremont plant, is over there in that area around San Francisco. So Tesla is going to continue to move and go on. But what does this mean for the company? What does it mean for the stock? What are things going for? How are things moving in the future? That's kind of what I want to get into in this video. Well, you may or may not know that there's an oil war going on right now. There's a price war. They keep slashing prices left and right. I think a lot of this involves Russia and the Middle East, but the benefit to consumers is in some areas of the United States, prices are down like near $1.50 a gallon, which is unheard of. And this is pushing back so far in the past. Now, I'd say any of us who are into electric cars, electric vehicles, want to have the most environmentally friendly form of vehicular transportation. We've known for a while that it was only a matter of time, I think, that the oil industry is going to start to disappear. And what's happening, or what I could have always predicted was going to happen, is that at some point in time, demand's going to drop, which will, of course, cause prices to drop. Now, we've got a demand drop here automatically because of the coronavirus. But the price drop is also due to a price war, which happens from time to time. And it also could be... We could be in the point right now where we're seeing the pendulum swing from ICE vehicles, internal combustion vehicles, to electric transportation. So all that combined, and the oil prices have really dropped down. I knew in my own mind that at the point that this shift would take place, oil prices would drop down, and that would be the last kind of thing that the industry has to hang on. It's like, oh, well, we can, or the individual, the consumer has to hang on. It's like, wow, it's so cheap to operate these vehicles now, because at some point, the oil's being outlawed in a lot of areas. When I say oil, I mean combustion. A lot of cities, a lot of urban areas are basically making it illegal, and will over time. They've already announced these laws are being worked on, assuming they get passed. That's a big assumption, but I think that they will. And they're going to outlaw these engines in high populated areas. So it's going to affect the demand. And when the demand gets affected, the price is going to drop, and that will make it super cheap to operate ICE vehicles at some point in time. We've been saying how electric vehicles are very inexpensive to operate, and they probably are. They're probably about half of what it cost to operate an internal combustion engine for the same type of a vehicle. Now, when I say half, I'm talking about fuel cost versus electric cost, because you also got to consider that there are no road taxes involved with electric vehicles, at least not at this point in time. Some states levy annual taxes on your registration if you drive an electric vehicle that are not levied on ICE vehicles, and that is a way for them to recoup their taxes on you, because they're not getting it through the sales of fuel like they would normally get. So we knew that this would happen. Now, is it all happening at once? I don't know. I mean, because I see that I think we all know that the economic crisis is so deep right now that a lot of businesses probably are not going to be able to make it out of this crisis without some kind of serious government intervention. Now, what does that mean? I mean, are there some businesses that should be saved, or some that shouldn't? And I'm just saying this as I'm thinking about the transition from internal combustion engines to electric vehicles. I don't know if anyone's going to really even be able to focus on that at this point in time. I think everyone's so upset right now that businesses are hurting so bad, and I get it. It makes sense that we want to save all of them. So we'll see how the government responds to that. A lot of how the market recovers or won't recover is going to depend on how the government is going to respond at this point in time. So where's Tesla stock going to go? Well, as we mentioned earlier in this video, we said, well, it's just a fact that it has been cut in half in a matter of a few months in this year, cut down 50% from the high. Well, the other side of this coin is if you look at the 52-week low, it's like 173 or something like that. That happened in June of last year. So it's still way up from the 52-week low. So either way, I think it's still Tesla stock is still a good value overall. It's a great value if you hopefully you didn't buy when it was in the 700s, 800s, 900s, because that was not the right time. I think it's always 20/20 hindsight, right? But I think that right now Tesla needs some type of momentum to keep it going. It's a momentum stock in my mind. There's always new, interesting stuff happening, like Cybertruck. That was a huge boost to the Tesla stock. There hasn't been much since then. I know that one of the rivals, Atlas Motors, who's developing all-electric commercial vehicles, just had their battery day. And Elon Musk has said that Tesla's going to have a Tesla battery day probably in April, but I also want to mention that maybe that will give Tesla some boost, but I think a lot of people already know they're going to somehow announce that they're going to have this million-mile battery. And now a million-mile battery is probably something that's going to benefit consumers. Like on the Atlas battery day, they're more talking about how fast their vehicles can charge, how fast they can get it. I think it's like 15 minutes they're saying they can charge a vehicle up, and that's super important on a commercial use of a vehicle. Now, it may not be able to last a million miles, that battery, but they're into a different market segment. So Atlas has got that going for them. What has Tesla kind of rolled out? Well, Tesla has rolled out most recently since Cybertruck launch last year, the Model Y production ahead of schedule, which is great because Tesla is rarely, if ever, ahead of schedule. Actually, more like never. So that is a great thing. The only problem is some of the things that they thought were going to appear in the Model Y didn't appear, and maybe that's set people back a little bit. I don't know, because Elon Musk had always talked about the 48-volt electrical system that was going to appear in the Model Y, and everyone's saying now that hasn't happened. It's just the same old 12-volt as we've always had in all the Teslas and almost every other car out there. Not all, but almost every other car. And of course, I made a video which I thought was the biggest surprise unveiling with the Model Y, which was a heat pump. A heat pump to condition the interior of the car, as opposed to an air conditioner combined with electric resistance coils, which is what most electric vehicles have. Now, ICE vehicles don't usually need any kind of electric coils because they're already pulling the heat off their engine, which is very inefficient, but at least in the wintertime you get some heat off of it, so it makes it better. So anyway, that I guess is a little bit of a disappointment. I think that in my video, I explained where I think that maybe Tesla's done this from a cost-saving measure, although it should improve range in the cold months, but that remains to be seen. It actually will have the most benefit for cold weather people. The average person may not see any benefit from that, but they will possibly see a reduction in the life of the system, since heat pump systems tend to not last as long as a dedicated air conditioner with a dedicated resistance coil that's separate. It does half the work. It should last twice as long, right? Well, that's just conventional thinking on that anyway. Who knows? Maybe Tesla has some kind of a great system. So to sum up what I've mentioned here, the big news is that there's really no big news for Tesla right now, and that's kind of why the stock's been sinking. Elon Musk has, actually, to kind of wrap this video up, let me also give Elon Musk's thoughts on this whole thing. Elon Musk, he sent out a memo to his employees, and it was revealed that he believes that the hype is way bigger than the actual virus and the impact that the virus is going to have. And I tend to not necessarily say that this is 100% true, but I tend to agree with some of that, because that remains to be seen. But I do believe that right now that's just where we are, and because of that, it's affecting all these things. At least Tesla is allowed to operate and build cars, but the problem is the demand. What's happening with the demand? A lot of these ICE manufacturers you see, like GM, I think they're extending 0% financing for 7 years. Tesla doesn't even really have their own financing program, I don't think. Maybe they do now. Somebody let me know if they do. When I bought mine, I had to go through an outside financing company. They helped me arrange it, but it wasn't their finance company. So these are interesting times, and it's going to be a little bit of a struggle right now for the reasons I stated about the oil war and just the lack of demand because of coronavirus that is pulling back demand on everything. I mean, with the stock market in general dropping like 30% and Tesla stock specifically dropping about 50%. So leave me your thoughts in the comments, and we will get through this. Next week could be a totally different story. So we will talk to you soon. Thanks for watching. Bye.